Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first of our Future Farming Resilience Fund webinars. My name is Greg Beaton. I work for Brown&Co, and we are going to be running through how we're going to deliver this project over the next 6 months. So the next slide will talk us through our agenda. Can you turn the next slide on? Okay, so we're going to run through an introduction to the project. We are going to run through how the changes in the agri-transition period are coming upon us quite fast. We're going to talk through the Brown&Co approach and what we believe will add real value to farmers through this period and through the project. We're going to run through the project stages so that everybody's informed of what the communications are going to be and what the expectations are. We'll run through at the end how to sign up and next steps, and then most importantly at the end we'll have plenty of time for questions. And one of the beauties about new technologies is that we can ask questions. You can only ask them by using the Q&A button at the bottom. So for those of you who are in front of screens, there's a Q&A button at the bottom. If you click that, you can type in your question and we will answer them at the end. One other sort of housekeeping point is that we are recording this. We have quite a number of participants who couldn't make it. They're out on their combines still, I think, certainly in this part of the world. So we'll be sharing with others afterwards. Hopefully, we'll run through this in about 20 minutes, which will give us sort of 10, 15 minutes for questions as they come in. So if we can move to the next slide. So let's just ask the question, what's this fund all about? So Defra have set up a fund to help support farmers through the agri-transition period as we move forward. And this period lasts 7 years. It started this year, finishes in 2027. And it really is a period of time as the UK moves on from leaving the European Union and the Common Agricultural Policy to its own way of funding the rural economy. And with a real focus, as we know, on public money for public goods. So through working with this project, the outcomes that we'd really like to see is that farmers are clear about what it means for them and their business. Farmers feel supported, confident in decisions, and also are encouraged to become more competitive, innovative, productive, so that the sector as a whole moves forward. I think really importantly as well, as we come out of what has been a very difficult time for most over the last year and a half, that we feel as though we're offering support around health and well-being too. It's a lonely place out there sometimes being a farmer. So on the phases of the project, there was a pilot phase for this project that ran for 9 to 12 months, finishing last March. And this was something that we were heavily involved in. We were the largest provider in that pilot phase, where we were working with 600 or so tenant and older farmers. And we're taking the learning from that into this project. So the interim phase now runs from now, starting literally today, through until February of next year. And then there'll be a main phase that runs from February until the start of Elms in October 24. One thing that is clear is that farmers can have access to support through all of those phases. So each of the phases, a farmer, if it wants to, can receive support from providers through. Next slide, please. So what's been happening? Well, this slide's quite busy, and it's intentionally quite busy, really, because in the last 12, 18 months, there's been a heck of a lot of information out there. Papers talking about the changes coming, the papers that originally came out around farming is changing, here's what you need to know. Last year, they've just all been updated now in June 21. We've had consultations around Elms, and there's been consultations around tenancy reform and around lump sum schemes. We've got pilots starting. We've got Defra increasingly using the blog mechanism to get information out there. We've got papers around pathways to sustainable farming. There's a lot going on. And the grid or the wheel on the right-hand side really sets out that 2021 is a year when things are really start to actually move and become more real. So there's a lot of things happening. BPS reductions start, cross-compliance improvements start kicking in. We get grants and productivity grants starting. We get the start of some of the new environmental schemes. But then also the red bit on the top right-hand side is the launch of the support schemes for the sector. And that's what this project is about. Next slide, please. And just to put that into a little bit more context and really to try and make the point, look how many times that 2021 and 2022 comes up in this timeline. There's a lot of things that are starting to happen this year and next year. And so this project will help everybody who's part of it understand the changes, understanding how they're applicable to them, what they need to be doing, how they need to be starting to engage with these new things. And there are some things that are impactful, and there are some that offer really great opportunities as well for the sector. Next slide. So just a little bit about Brown&Co. So I'm based in the east of the country. Brown&Co, we have offices sort of in the east, north, central, 11 offices. We work across the whole of England, and we've got clients across the whole of England, and we're delivering this project across the whole of England. What we offer are teams of professionals in agriculture, and we also have very strong land agency, environmental, commercial property teams as well. And that's really important because to offer the full package and the full range of support on farm, we believe a whole range of skill sets is required. We work with about 2,500 farmers every year. We have a footprint of about 350,000 hectares. And as I said, we were the largest provider in the first phase of the project, and we're bringing that learning forward. Next, thank you. So what's our delivery? As a farmer sitting there, why should you be interested in working with us? Well, one thing that we took a lot of learning from in the last year or so is around the real benefits of one-to-one support. And our approach is going to be driving down farm drives, sitting around kitchen tables, walking around farms with farmers, and talking on a one-to-one basis about what the impacts are, what the opportunities are, what is it that farmers really want to understand, how do we work together to try and develop and bring some new learning and some new opportunity through the phase that we're going through. So one-to-one support is key. We're also doing quite a lot of benchmarking as part of our delivery. And we're doing that so that farmers can understand where they sit against the sector, where there are areas where they're doing very well or areas where there's room for improvement. And we're also offering sort of a range of peripheral sort of services. So this webinar to help people get up to speed. We're also offering some group one-to-one sessions later on, because I think after farmers have received support, some sharing of what worked, what maybe didn't work so well, how farmers are thinking about planning is really important. That peer-to-peer engagement, we believe, will bring great value. We have a whole team of over 40 experienced consultants who are going to be working on this project. And we think that social change is really important in part of this engagement. The sector traditionally has not been one that has changed fast. Thinking, assimilating, sharing, bringing family members on board with change takes time. And I think sometimes we need some grey hairs to be able to make that happen or to really support that. So we're bringing experienced consultants to this delivery. And that, alongside the specialist skills we bring, should provide the best opportunity for real value creation on farm. Next slide, please. So what did we learn from the first project? Well, I think the first thing, and this is probably a statement of the obvious, is that BPS loss is going to hit a lot of farmers quite hard. When we analysed how this would affect our farmers, we found that nearly 50% of the 600 or so that we worked with last time were receiving less than £30,000 as their BPS check. So lots of small recipients of BPS. We also found that of those and the other groups, those that went all the way up to receiving the bigger checks, over half of those put together said that their businesses would not be viable without BPS. And BPS means, or not viable means, making a loss. And businesses can make a loss 1 year, 2 years, but after a while it becomes unsustainable. So it's important, I think, that we address that now as to how business viability can be maintained and in some cases improve going forward with this decline in BPS. And as part of this, we'll be working through that. We'll be looking at the effect on individual businesses, and the calculator that will be part of our report will allow people to understand what that means for their business. We also last time, and we will again this time, produced a number of case studies that actually were really well received. So this set out opportunities of how and examples of how other farmers are adapting and changing. So we produce case studies around new opportunities around carbon and woodland creation, around diversification and family succession or surrender. And these really helped to sort of share the messaging across other farmers as to how farmers were actually changing and adapting. And we'll be doing that again this time, and we'll also be sharing some of the ones we produced last time. So another part of our delivery is around producing a report, and we've called it a resilience report. And we do think it's important to leave something on farm as part of our interactions that allows farmers and their families to look at it, to digest, to understand, to think, and then to come back and continue working with us over time. So this report really, on the left-hand side here, sets out the sections of it. So it's going to be running through business overviews, performance analysis, financial analysis, strengths and weaknesses, produces a resilience benchmark that I'll come back to in a sec. And it also really tries to understand what are the objectives of that farmer or that farming business. You know, where do they want to be from a personal level over the next 5 years? Where do they want to be from an economic or a financial level? And it produces an action plan that we're calling the overall business assessment. And that's really a plan that we can revisit after 6, 12, 18 months and try and support delivery of that plan going forward. On the right-hand side here, just a few examples of some of the financial analysis we'll produce. Don't take too much notice of the figures, but you get the drift around producing some performance ratios, understanding how strong the business is from retaining profits, and whether it's moving forward from a value creation perspective. So this is our resilience benchmark, and this is something that we're quite proud of. And we believe there are 6 factors that are important in building resilience in businesses. So one is around performance and thinking about how we can measure that against total income from farming. So nationally recognized indices, thinking about how individual businesses can be benchmarked against that. Diversification is something that's increasingly important for businesses. And we are going to look at, as well as the diversification that's happening already, the opportunity for diversification going forward. What are the things that farmers maybe have been thinking about but haven't quite got moving yet, or even maybe haven't thought about that could be opportunities because of their particular location? We're going to be looking at social factors and thinking about family structures, around the need or urgency in some cases for succession and those conversations, and trying to sort of map out timelines and help process. We know that there are some discussions that actually families are quite hard to have. And for us as an external catalyst, trying to pull together those discussions is something that we think we can help with, and we'll sort of benchmark as to whether that's something that is needed or is actually already in play. The environmental side of things is a big push. We know our climate is changing, and we all as landowners or land managers are going to have an even bigger role going forward around trying to produce some of the results and the solutions that are needed here to try and help mitigate what's happening with climate. So the environmental side of things are going to be important, and increasingly, the range of options, whether they be around biodiversity or carbon capture or woodland or water, or packaged up into the emerging sustainable farming incentive and ALM schemes. There's a whole mix there, and we can help people work their way through it and understand what may fit best in particular situations. We'll look at some fairly standard financial metrics, and then we'll also look at what we call value creation potential, where there could be, again, opportunities around buildings, around commercial, around renewable energies, or new enterprises. And we'll pull those together into this resilience benchmark. So this little spidergram, it's called, on the right here, will help to pull through, and our report will automatically produce these indicators to allow us to understand where we need to focus and where we don't need to focus going forward. And that's something that we see that we can continue to produce, every 6, every 12 months, and map progress. So how do we bring our offer to farmers? What's the process? And this is a run through of the process in 7 stages. Now, I know that on this call, we've got some people who have already registered with us and some who haven't yet. So let me run through the whole process from beginning to end. So firstly, you register interest with us. You can either phone us, you can email us, or you can register on our website. And I'll give you those details in a moment. And we're out there, we're advertising, we're working with a number of partner organisations and networks. And I think ourselves, along with the other providers, are being quite heavily publicised through Defra and the NFU and others. So once we hear from you, we will get back to you. We're saying within 24 hours. To collect any information that we don't have from you. And initially we just need name, address, contact details, and SBI number. So after that, we'll send out an information pack to you. And we've just literally sent out today the first tranche of information packs to farmers. And that information pack will set out process. It'll just set out some of the metrics we need to capture. It'll set out a list of information that we would like to collect from you, and really reiterate again stages in this project. So after you receive that, one of our project team will call you on the phone and spend 10 minutes just running through a couple of little metrics that we've got to do as part of our Defra delivery. That should take about 10 minutes. And also as part of that, we'll understand a little bit more about you and your farming business, which will enable us to point you in the right direction and to match you with the most appropriate consultant who will support your business. So you'll then get a call from the consultant, and they will run through the info pack, run through preparing for the one-to-one meeting, get to know you, find out a bit more about your family and farm situation. And it's an opportunity for farmers as well to ask as many questions as they like. We'll also at that point ask for you to send in a set of accounts, because if we can get some accounts analysis and some of the background done before we meet you, it enables us to focus as much as we can when we do meet on the important conversations. So a consultant will then arrange and spend half a day with you on a farm. It might be a walk around the farm to have a look at what you're doing. It might be a sit around the kitchen table. It's down to you and them to decide how you want to play that. But the most important thing is I think it's got to be focused on what any individual farmer wants. So some areas we can deprioritise, some areas we can prioritise. And I think it's important to get that mix right so that we don't just provide the same service to everybody. We want it to be of real value with individual farmers and where they really want to get the most information and the most support. So after that meeting, we'll produce the report and farmers will then receive it. and they'll get another call then to check, make sure that it reflects the conversation, that the action plan inside is something that is deliverable, and to understand what support is required to move forward with that. And then finally, at the end of the project, and this phase finishes next February, so it's going to be sort of in January, February of 2022, you'll get another call from your consultant who will check in progress, see whether you need any more support, and just run through another couple of metrics and updates on the information that we collected when we spent some time with you on the farm. So that's the process. What's really important, I think, to get most out of it for everybody's perspective is to prepare in advance. And as part of the info pack, we're going to be sending out a list. It does seem like quite an onerous list, but I'm sure there's plenty of information that's quite easy to collect, and I'm sure not all of it will be appropriate for every farmer. But to try and collect as much as you can in advance so that we can start processing and understanding your businesses before we meet up. And when the consultant calls you, they will also run through this and see whether they can help and maybe suggest some easier ways for producing this information. So next steps for everybody. So we start delivery next week. If you haven't already signed up, then please do email Defra at Brown&Co or Defra FFR at brown-co.com. Call us on the number here or go to our website. And as I say, to start with, all we need is name, contact information, and SBI number. We will get back to you within 24 hours with a confirmation email and ask for anything else that we don't have. If you have already signed up, you should be getting your information pack either in the post in the next couple of days, or you should have already got it on email this afternoon. And so please read that pack, understand next steps, and we will then be calling you up next week. We're going to try and get through as many as we can next week. We've got quite a big list of people already signed up with us, but we'll do our best. If not, it'll be the week after, and that will start the engagement with us. And then we want to then get the one-to-one meetings set up within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Obviously, if you're busy, you can put us back, but we want to try and get engaging, get starting as soon as possible. So that really is run through the background of the project. Hopefully it's given some idea on the Brown&Co approach, and begins the process of engagement with everybody on this call, hopefully, and plenty of others who I'm sure will be picking up and deciding maybe after harvest that they want to engage as well. So now's the time for any questions, and we'd like to try and field as many as we can, whether they be around the process, next steps, how you want to engage with us, whether you feel as though you want to share it with friends or whatever. Let's have those questions now. So I have one question here that's come up regarding tenant farmers. So somebody has asked how many tenant farmers that we're working with, and sort of the caveat or the follow-on being that there is more risk for tenant farmers than others. Do we think that Defra understand and acknowledge this? So I would say that our answer to that is we're working, and we plan to work with a lot of tenant farmers. We work with our initial project was dedicated specifically with tenant farmers. We work very closely with the TFA in delivery of that and also in disseminating it. We have in our resource base land agency who are very skilled in tenancy matters, and we see that this is something that we can bring as part of our delivery, and we aim and we're specifically pushing to as many tenants as we can. We understand from a tenancy perspective that the whole thing around rentals, the change in BPS that's underpin rents, what's going to happen to rents. There's the whole area around how some of the environmental payments are going to be seen by landlords. there's the opportunity for new land, the opportunity for giving up land, the opportunity for succession and how that might work with the lump sums coming up or exit. So there's a lot in there from a tenancy perspective, and that's something that we're very engaged with and want to engage with tenants on. A question here on how many farmers do we anticipate engaging with over the next month, and how can farmers ensure they're talking to somebody who's familiar with their area? Okay. So our ambition or our target for this project is to work with 750 farmers over the next 6 months. And we want to break that down into starting to work with as many as we can, really from next week. So we would like from next week to start working with a proportion of those farmers, and our target is to try and work with 30 per week for the next 6 months. We want to try and target those who are less busy at the moment. So it's probably going to be livestock, grassland, dairy type farmers, appreciating that most of the arable farmers who are harvesting are not going to be coming on board until later in the autumn. And so the second part of this question really was around how can farmers be sure that they are working with somebody who is familiar with their area. So we have within our consultancy team experienced consultants from all over the country. So the obvious question might be, well, you want to work in the West Country, haven't got an office down there. Well, we've got a number of our team actually who are farmers from that part of the world, family farm, that's where they're from, and they're very keen to get back there and to start working with farmers in those areas. So we've got people who are already engaging in Devon and Cornwall and Dorset and the like in those areas. One of the things that I think we do as part of our delivery, we plan to do, is that we want to match skills of our team with the requirements of and needs of farmers. So part of our initial part of when farmers come in and we start talking to them is to skill match, so that we do ensure we send out, to livestock farms, our team who are experienced in livestock matters or who might be experienced in tenancy matters if we are working particularly with tenants. There's another question here around how does the Brown&Co offer compare with others, and another on how long does the free funding advice go on for, and when will the farmer have to start paying? So let me just answer the last one first, because I'm hoping that we have Charles Whittaker coming on board, who has asked to say a few words around the Brown&Co offer against others. I need to check whether he's on board yet. So on the second one around funding advice, so us and all the other providers have got a set intervention between now and the end of February. And so the advice period lasts for that time. It's not an open-ended element of advice. There's a set amount of time, which might be a day and a half or so, allocated per individual farmer. So that can be delivered between now and the end of February. We expect that when the new funding phase, the main phase, comes on board, which will be another 2.5 years, there will be again another tranche, or Defra will allocate funds for providers to work with farmers during that period. So we need to look at this in various tranches. Obviously, farmers can, if they want to, go outside of that and pay for their own advice. But I would say that the real key is to use the available time as effectively as possible. And that comes back to preparing in advance and having those early conversations with the consultant. There's a question here about information and the privacy of information. And I think this is important to make this point, that as part of sign up, we need to provide to Defra the information on name, address, contact details, and SBI number. That's nothing different to what Defra and the RPA already have for farmers. If you receive BPS, they already have information. Everything else is confidential between the consultant and the farmer. So nothing else goes to Defra where it can be attributed in any way to individual farms. And I think it's really important to make that point.
Hi, Greg, can you hear me?
Hi, Charles. Yeah, so Charles has just, can I introduce Charles? So Charles is our managing partner. Charles has just come on board. And Charles, good timing, because I think we just need to just explore, there's been a question around, why Brown&Co? What's Brown&Co offer? Obviously a number of other providers out there. And we, talk through from our perspective around our breadth of skills and experience. But I wonder whether you might add a few words to that.
Thank you very much for that. And I think from, as you say, there are a number of other providers, I think 18 in total, which seems quite a large number. But I think from our standpoint, obviously, this is the sort of thing we do all of the time. And I think you mentioned before about matching individuals' skills and experience, obviously, to particular recipients of this service, obviously, which is vital. But also regional experience too, which you also touched on. I think, our 40 or so ag consultants do this sort of thing all of the time with a range of different businesses. And I think one of the important things that all of us that are old enough and ugly enough to have understood over the last 30 years of agriculture and change in the industry and the change that's coming is that we have got a big bank of experience of individual farming businesses that have changed, adapted, move forward in all sorts of different ways. And whilst the changes that are coming now are big, probably the biggest in the last 40, 45 years, we've seen a lot of adaptation and succession and changes of business structures over the years and enterprise mixes, etc. And I think that gives us a big network of experience to draw on, but also a big network of potential other people to be involved in those different enterprises, and in terms of perhaps alternative enterprise on farm that need other skills, or perhaps joint venture arrangements, that sort of thing. We've got a big network around our bench of experience, which I think helps us to set ourselves apart from some others in delivery, I would say. And something Greg touched on right at the start as well, in terms of the other skills and capability we have in the firm, of both land agency, landlord tenant matters, that's come up recently on the questions, commercial property aspects, planning and architectural design and that sort of thing. And I think creating value and adding value and helping farming families and individual farming businesses look a little bit outside into other pools of experience. I think we can bring a lot of that to the table and I hope anyway, and that's what we do all the time, a sort of friendly, approachable way around the kitchen table, looking at the farm in detail, not something that's too sort of metric driven or off farm driven, because I think obviously, as everybody will know, farming business is very much about the resource, the people, what's available in particular. So I think that's I hope would set us apart from many of the other offerings, really.
Thanks, Charles. Hopefully that's, please do ask if you want any more clarifications on that. I'll leave you to think whether you want to add anything else in a moment, Charles, but I'll just run through. I've got a couple more questions on here that I can answer. One of them is around, will the review include guidance on accessing other government funding streams, such as productivity grants for updating equipment? So we know that there's going to be a new round of grants this autumn, large grants and small grants, the old productivity scheme, but then some under the farm transformation funding scheme as well. And what this review will do, it will certainly signpost you to those. It'll give you some idea as to whether they would be applicable for your business. And then it's up to farmers after that to decide how they want to go ahead and access those grants. So it's sort of opening up the opportunities, making sure that everybody's informed and understands the process. But the advice won't go to the extent of actually filling in the forms and doing the grants for you. That's something that we could do, obviously, but not as part of this scheme. There's a question here around, can participants sign up with somebody else, with another provider? I think this is something that Defra are very clear on, that unfortunately the answer to that is no. There has to be a choice. And that's one of the reasons why Defra want to, we have to submit SBI numbers so that there can be no duplication of farmers, working with 2 or 3 providers. So it comes down to a choice. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're running this. And I'm sure others are running their own as well, other providers, so that we can try and showcase what we offer. I will say that I certainly have had quite a number of calls from farmers. 1 or 2 have been trying to sort of understand and have a bit of a beauty parade, I suppose. Very happy to do that, although shorter calls better than longer calls. So if anybody wants to know anything else, please do contact us, and I'm very happy to give a bit more on an individual basis. One more comes in. If we took advice last year from another company, can we join this scheme with Brown&Co? So I'm assuming that question relates to from the pilot phase. If you worked on the pilot phase of this project with somebody else, can you now join us on this interim phase? Absolutely you can, yes, please do. We'd love to have you on board. So yes, there's no continuity of needing to stick with the same provider between different phases of this project. The last one I've got here is just really around timeline. I think it's quite helpful to explain how we see this timeline working. Because what we want to do is to start the process of initial engagement, of the telephone support, the one-to-one, the production, the report, and then the follow-up after that. We would like to keep that sort of within a defined period. So I think our approach would be that once we start working with somebody, within the month, we would like to get to the end of that process. So if you work with us, say in September, we would like to think that by the end of September, we'd have finished that phase of engagement. We will then engage with you towards the end of the project, but that will be your sort of period of focus working with us on the project. Obviously, you can give us a call and follow up over the phone from at any time, but that would how we see it would work. And we need to do that to keep moving and be able to basically deliver to the number of people who are coming to us. Okay, so that seems to be the end of the questions. Charles, is there anything else that you would like to add as a sort of a closing note before I close off?
Thanks, Greg. I'm not quite sure whether you can see me or not. Hopefully you can hear me, but probably best if you don't see me, maybe. No, I think that's very thorough. I think from my point of view, you touched on something else there, in terms of the extent of our involvement and engagement with the businesses through this particular project. And somebody had alluded to that earlier about, when does it start to cost a farmer money? I mean, obviously this project is a free delivery point, as you say. And one of our challenges, from the work that we normally do with farm businesses is, pretty engaged level of involvement in helping people adapt and change, and putting in ingredients to catalyze that, if you like, and help push change and deliver, and help farming families and farming businesses deliver change, is stopping ourselves getting too involved, I suppose, in this process at this initial stage. This is obviously a Defra funded project that's running, but importantly coming up with a summary that hopefully farm businesses and families can go away with, and then seek to use that signposting to implement those changes themselves. And of course, we're available to help thereafter, and there will be further phases of funding coming from Defra, I'm sure, in the future. But as Greg's alluded to, in order to get through our sort of quota of these engagements, we needed to move on reasonably quickly. But I'm sure there'll be lots of ongoing opportunities for engagement, so that we can help and assist and signpost where necessary. So no, I think other than that, Greg, nothing really to add from my point of view, but keen to get moving.
Yes, we are keen to get moving. Just checking there's no more questions. So yes, so thank you everybody who's come on board with this this first of our webinars. We will run another one, similar theme every month. The idea being that it helps to get people up to speed with where we are, to help people understand, I think, the importance of making the most you can out of this by preparing in advance and getting as much as you can out of your individual consultant. But also as well, I would say, please spread the word. We've got we want to work with a lot of farmers across the whole of the country. So please do tell others. If you think there are any opportunities for us to work with wider groups, farmer groups or the like, please let us know. And we look forward to getting stuck in and helping support the sector going forward. So thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.